The star seen in the east and moving westward is a comet. The meaning of a comet depends on its direction. Pliny the Elder tells us, sometimes there is a comet in the western sky, usually a terrifying star and not easily explained. He next describes the political calamities signified by that type of star. Of course, such a star would make Herod and Jerusalem with him duly troubled. Political calamity is coming his way. The fact that the Magi seek out the king of the Judeans indicates that the birth of the child will have political ramifications. Note that the translation Jews in some of the best English translations, for example, New American Bible Revised Edition and New Revised Standard Version, New Revised Standard Version, is simply incorrect. The Greek used here and throughout Matthew is Judaios, and it always and only means Judean. The term in Matthew always refers to someone or something from the land of Judea. Correlatives to this term are Galilean and Perean. Together, all three make up the people Israel. Matthew chapter 2, verse 6. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel. Here for the first time we find that Matthew's name for the ethnic group involved in this story, the one that Matthew's concerned about and the one that Jesus is concerned about, the Matthean Jesus, is Israel. Later, Joseph is directed to go into the land of Israel when he's in Egypt. Not Judea, not land of the Jews. In Matthew, Jesus always refers to his people as Israel. Matthew chapter 8, verse 10. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Okay, so Jesus has been asked by a centurion, who is a patron for people in Galilee. And he's asked by the centurion, could you heal my son, right? The person who's like a son, right? The servant's like a son. And then Jesus does. And Jesus declares in front of a whole bunch of people publicly that he says, you know, it says in Matthew, he's amazed. And then he says, amen, I say to you, among no one else have I found such faith, loyalty, in Israel. Now, I got to tell you that the NRSV and the NABRE really botched this, because nowhere does the text say this centurion is a non-Israelite. A lot of people assume that because he's a centurion. No, no, no. There were people on the take of Rome that were ethnically Israelites. So we need to understand that, right? Remember the Herodians and people like them? They dress like Romans. They speak Greek. They're in bed with Rome, but they're ethnically of the house of Israel. So nowhere does the text say that. And the translations that are found in the New American Bible Revised Edition and the New Revised Standard Version are spun in a way to make it pretty clear that he's a non-Israelite. Never says he's a Gentile. So that's a little side note. Matthew chapter 9, verse 32 to 33. As they were going out, a demoniac who could not speak, a mute, was brought to Jesus. And when the demon was driven out of the mute person, he spoke. The crowds were amazed and said, nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel. I want you to keep noticing the focus here throughout the text of Matthew. Matthew chapter 10, verses 5 to 6. Jesus sent out these 12, the 12 apostles, after instructing them thus, do not go into pagan territory or enter a Samaritan town. Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. What's the Matthean Jesus concerned with? The house of Israel. Matthew chapter 10, verse 23, Jesus said, when they persecute you in one town, flee to another. Amen, I say to you, you will not finish the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. Matthew chapter 15, verse 24. Jesus said in reply, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew chapter 19, verse 28. Jesus said to them, Amen, I say to you, that you who have followed me, in the new age, when the Son of Man is seated on his throne of glory, will yourselves sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. That's why there's 12. According to the progymnosmata of Meander Rhetor, one of the first things a writer of a piece in praise of someone famous should do is praise the city from which the subject comes, because honor is ascribed to those born in an honorable city. To pull this one off, however, Matthew has to resort to some pretty deft literary gymnastics. When Matthew quotes the prophet Micah regarding Bethlehem, he turns Micah's meaning around completely. Micah chapter 5, verse 1. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, least among the clans of Judah, from you, the clan, shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, David, whose origin is from of old, from ancient times. Micah had called Bethlehem one of the little clans of Judah. But Matthew does some literary gymnastics with that, does a few backflips, and he transforms it into this. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will govern my people Israel. In this way, Matthew tells of a Jesus who comes from a royal city, has royal ancestors, and is to be called a ruler, and is to be a ruler of Israel. See why he does that? What he's interested in, as we've been saying in all these classes, is establishing an honor rating for Jesus that makes sense with him being the risen cosmic Lord and Messiah.
So are you saying that when Matthew, whoever Matthew was, looked back at other writings, he purposely looked for writings that could be supportive somehow of things that happened long ago that were written about by prophets that were occurring at a time?
Matthew and his source.
Right.
And Matthew wants to stress that Jesus has an honorable rating. He's from the city of David. And he calls it a city. Is Bethlehem a city? Or is it a town just a little bit bigger than Nazareth? He's got to make it a city.
So people didn't walk around expecting a child to be born in Bethlehem, because everybody would have moved close to Bethlehem and wanting to be
which they're in Jerusalem. Bethlehem's in walking distance of Jerusalem.
Okay.
But yeah, it's yeah, you're getting some things here, right? Then the expectations, the only expectation. Look, you put two first century Israelites together, you'll have three opinions on what the Messiah is. Messiah in the first century is like Heinz 57 varieties. Okay? You got a whole bunch of different opinions. The only ones that are pretty much the same are, it has to do something with political religion and relates to the theocracy that's supposed to come. That being said, nobody's sitting around with a chart expecting this, expecting that. That's
like we do today.
Remember, all
the Bible expecting certain.
Exactly, and the way a modern Christian fundamentalist, Catholic fundamentalist too, reads the Bible in so-called passages is he thinks it's like Nostradamus. This was written beforehand. It's beforehand prediction of something about to happen. No. That's not how our first century ancestors or anybody in the Bible understands prophecy. Prophecy and predestination stuff and God's eternal elective works and stuff, that's all after the fact. So Jesus was born in Bethlehem, perhaps because they were on a pilgrimage and Mary had to have the child, and okay, was born in Bethlehem, or perhaps there was ancestry that did come from Bethlehem. Joseph lost the land, or his ancestors lost the land, they had to move up to Nazareth. Okay, well, now after the fact, Bethlehem, that's associated with David, right? One thing's for sure, Jesus is risen. We've experienced him risen in the Jesus groups. It's been communicated to us, and we've interpreted him as Messiah and Lord, soon to establish theocracy. But it doesn't make, I can't wrap my head around why that's a peasant with a dubious origin, whose mother was pregnant early. So how do I work this out, Lord? Well, the only thing I have to work it out with is my tradition. Our tradition, our Israelite tradition. And yes, David is associated in some interpretations with the Messiah. So how can I stress this? To get people away from, he's a Nazarene. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's actually very beautiful. The truth is always beautiful. Truth, goodness, and beauty go together. The problem is, and this is a problem I have with a lot of people right now talking about beauty, and we have to make the gospel beautiful for people. I don't think they can properly distinguish aesthetics from beauty. You know, the Elephant Man, Joseph Merrick, is very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
And so is the messiness of our Lord's origins. But, yeah, anyway, we'll move off that. So Matthew tells of Jesus who comes from a royal city, has royal ancestors, is about to be a ruler of Israel. For the Jesus who started off as a village artisan in Mark, called Son of Mary, that's how Mark does it, without an infancy narrative. Matthew has traversed the whole social spectrum system, hasn't he? By giving him this royal origin.
A thought just occurred.
Sure.
If all of Israel was expecting this Messiah, and this baby was born in Bethlehem, and the magi came and all of that.
In history.
In history.
Right. Because it is true, but right.
It happened that way in history.
Yes.
Everyone who believed, especially the Judeans, would have, he wouldn't have been able to be put to death. Because he would have been honored and protected from day one.
It would have been, would have been a big war. Like,
it would have been a war rather than...
And how about the fact that people don't know who the hell he is when he's walking around? It makes sense in Mark.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense in Matthew. A little more sense in Luke, but it doesn't make sense in Matthew. They don't know who he is. Even Herod's son, Herod Antipas, doesn't know who he is. How could you forget that? But that's not the purpose of Matthew. Matthew isn't a Western or 21st century person obsessed with facts. Neither is his audience. Matthew's obsessed with honor, and that's why he's telling the story the way he's telling it. And it's okay that it clashes with the rest of the storyline, because the real problem Matthew has is why. I don't understand. I don't understand why God would honor a dirt town, illiterate day laborer. He has no honor. But God did give him honor. That's fine, I can accept that. But why would God give him honor? I mean, see, and this is the thing. And he also dies shamefully. Okay.